Hi, I'm Chris from airwindows, and I have something kind of neat for you today. I fairly recently put out a authentic update of my old 2Vinyl 4, which follows that path of plugin as it developed. It's consistent with the path that 2Vinyl was following, but there were some people interested in splitting off bits of it, and you'll never guess what happened with GrooveWear. I managed to take GrooveWear out and alter and change it and make it even a lot more interesting than it was. Let me show you. I'll just make sure that I'm recording. Ah, yes, so I am. Here's a bright little recording. Voila. GrooveWear has a really interesting way of cutting down frequencies. I mean, part of what you need to know about it is it's operating on the rate of change, or the slew rate, but it is applying an average function to the slew rate. If you apply an average, here, I'll show you. airwindows, average. Let's make sure that GrooveWear is done. If you apply an average to the sound, you get a behavior that's kind of like this. This is 10 taps of averaging. It gets darker. But then you start getting these funny, like, see those nodes? You get these cancellations going on because the average is just a rectangular window. So you got a lot of damping. And it's actually a really cool sound. Sort of vaguely flangy or something. Which means that it's realistic because our acoustic environments are constantly full of flangy sounds. We hear right through them, and they give a kind of ambiance and color to things. But as you can see, we can start rolling off highs with a simple average on the samples. And what you'll get, you see the node in here that gets moved around as I shift it. And at certain points it's really deep, and at certain points it's relatively shallow, and it can go all the way over to here. This 10 sample average goes right down to about 4.2. Actually, I can zero it down very exactly. It's about 4.3K. Here's the thing. GrooveWear is applying a principle like that to slew rate, not just the samples. So rather than have that kind of node, it develops another node a little bit past 10K, but the whole tone that it generates is completely different because it's not doing samples. It is doing an extended average, and this goes out to like 19 slews being averaged together. Again, you hear what it did to the hi-hat? And that goes darker and darker. Until the point that we have this very, very dark suppressed sound, but there's a huge cut just over 10K. It's done something a little bit like the average thing, so this doesn't function anything like a regular high frequency roll-off. And then if you like, you can use the dry wet, which was not present in 2Vinyl. 2Vinyl is consistent with where 2Vinyl was previously for people who had it before and liked it. But, you know, I like to advance things, so this is a variation on that kind of stuff. It's extended a little bit. And there's actually an interesting tweak where 2Vinyl used a exaggerated version of GrooveWear that gave a sort of little extra zing, even though it was a less extended range. The range kind of went up to probably about here. And this one has the dry wet. But the 2Vinyl one had this cancellation at about 0.5, so this actually is going to give you a completely different tone than you had out of 2Vinyl 4. Why not just continue eclipsing previous plugins? It's all good, right? They're all free. Don't worry. So here we have this brightness. And this is probably the most well-developed version of GrooveWear I've got so far, and this note is part of the sound. It's not present in the original sound, and it's kind of moving lower slightly as it extends. See, if we have it up here, we have a pretty extended note around 15K or so. And because it's a slew restriction rather than just a high frequency roll-off, there's still a little energy up around Nyquist. Up brighter than you can probably hear. It'll give it a little bit more life than a normal roll-off. And again, it's doing the same thing that average did, but in another domain. We got this really deep note just past 10K. Around here we have a little place where it's doing its thing, but it's not making one of those deep cancellation notes anymore. And of course, it can be automated very nicely as well. This one's very friendly to control movements. So that is GrooveWear as its own plugin with a completely different sound. And you might ask, what would the averaging technology do if rather than doing it on the samples or the rate of change of the samples, you did it on the rate of change of the rate of change? That one's coming too. That's an existing plugin. It didn't sell very well because people didn't really understand it, and I can probably goose it up a little bit by the time I get back to it. It was called Aura. And that is coming out in the future as I work through all of these plugins that I got to do. By the way, speaking of plugins and things, one interesting note is you're watching this on YouTube, and there's been a lot of concern about YouTube kicking off smaller creators and things. You have to have 4,000 hours of views and 1,000 subscribers. Well, I had about 7,000 hours of views because I put out a lot of these free plugins. I only had 983 subscribers, but it's okay. Somebody on Twitter was going like, anybody who's really close, give a shout out to you and we'll help you get above the threshold. And I went, yes, please. So now I'm at about 1,003 subscribers. But if you know anybody who likes airwindows, or if you're liking airwindows and you haven't subscribed, I never ask for likes and subscribes because that's just not what I do here. I'm trying to give tools to people. First, these software tools, and I'm going to be working on getting some hardware stuff together. And that's, I have some order sheets from Mouser Electronics of a lot of electronic parts I'm picking up. More on that later. But I'm pleased that I managed to get over YouTube's new threshold there, because my concern is not so much about being a YouTube star. Ooh, I'll get all of the incredible money. Patreon is what works for me for that. It's more about trying to prevent YouTube from doing bad things to me or cutting me off or not letting people see my videos simply on the basis that they think I'm too much small fry. So thankfully we've got past that, but if you know anybody who is capable of, subscribing to the channel just to make sure that YouTube is paying a little attention, please do. It can't hurt. These things, we got to deal with these things as they transcribe, as they transpire. I don't know what to tell you other than this is the sea in which I swim, and it's going fairly well. And I seem to be past that threshold point, so hopefully that's good things. And if you'd like to see the airwindows grow, it's not really about making the channel grow, it's about me having the time and energy and some funding to be able to just work on this stuff all the time, which I mostly do. Sometimes I have to rest because sometimes I fall right over. But mostly I work on this stuff a lot, and that's going pretty well. And stuff like the YouTube subscriber stuff is more or less just to make sure that I don't get my signal cut off by some enormous large corporation that doesn't know I exist. Anyway, this has been GrooveWear. I hope you like it because I think it's pretty cool. I'm liking how this one turned out. And I think it'll be very helpful for things like if you have like a drum loop and you'd like the drum loop to have sort of a more lo-fi organic analog kind of quality, or you're just throwing it on snares or something like that just because you want it to be darker and more textural. It's real good at that. It's real good at that. And I hope you like it. Thanks.